It's football and other efforts. We're sponsored by Bluegrass Beverages. He's Mike. I'm Zach. We're going to be getting right into that. But first, Bluegrass Beverages. If you need to find champagne bottles to pop in favor and celebration of Mike Vrabel being gone and the evolution arriving, head to Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, Tennessee. And if you need to drink your sorrows away because you're sad that the caveman is gone, go ahead, go to Bluegrass Beverages and drink your sorrows away. They got something for everybody on the Mike Vrabel emotional spectrum. He's Mike Kernan. You can read an article that he has coming out about what is your article about? You mentioned Diana Rossini's reporting, but what is this article actually about besides Mike Vrabel's firing, obviously?
Yeah, so I mean, most of the intro is really about Vrabel's firing, the process, questions about ownership, things like that. But then I get the meat of the article gets into potential replacements.
We're going to have all kinds of stuff at Stacking the Inbox because if you were a day one stackingtheinbox.com subscriber, then last year you would remember all the stuff I've done on the reporting of general managers and the offseason and offensive coordinators and all this stuff. Now I got a whole slew of positions to talk about that need to be filled and likely connections and talking about all that and providing you with the best background. Stackingtheinbox.com, parkarski.com for Mike. Mike, after sleeping on it, because it was very reminiscent of the Jets loss in 2021 where you were just like so fucking depressed. You were very emotional yesterday.
I wasn't emotional.
I like here's what I
disagree with that.
Well, then maybe you need to work on your wording in your texts and the usage of punctuation because you were pretty distraught. And pretty upset. And maybe not necessarily that Mike Vrabel is gone, but I think the process, and we're going to talk about all that stuff.
Sucks. Yeah.
We're going to talk about that.
Right.
Stop. We're going to talk about that. You think I'm just going to leave out the entire thing about the process when we both agree on? That's probably the one thing we probably both agree on.
But I'm saying that's what I was upset about. It was not
So you were emotional yesterday. I liken it to I've never seen this many white people complain about something so stupid. Not the process, but you're talking about the interviews at the time. Since people were asked to wear masks during a pandemic. That's going to get me in a lot of trouble, I'm sure, in the comments right now.
Yeah.
But after sleeping on it, give us because we're going to talk about everything. Okay, so give us a very brief overview now that you're 24 hours practically removed. A very brief overview of your thoughts on Mike Vrabel not being the Titans head coach. Not the process, not the fact he was fired versus traded, but just him not being the head coach anymore.
I still think it's a mistake. I think he's a good football coach. I think he's one of the better football coaches in the NFL. Now, we can talk about like whether he wanted too much power, that kind of thing. I think those are separate questions. But as far as who is coaching the Tennessee Titans football team, I think the odds of them hiring someone better than him are slim. I mean, and to put it in perspective, the Titans have had 19 coaches, or Titans/Oilers have had 19 coaches in franchise history. Vrabel has won more than all but two of them, Jeff Fisher and Bum Phillips. So just by pure odds, the history tells you that they're more than likely to find a worse coach than a better coach. So we'll see what happens. Like, it's possible they do find someone better. It's not like Mike Vrabel was without flaws, but yeah, I wake up today still thinking that this was a mistake and a rash decision on Amy Adams-Strunk's part.
Ooh, man, I wish you wouldn't have said that last thing because that's kind of like I want to talk about that later. So let's get. I want to talk about the process. Okay.
Okay.
So, and for all those that may be in the comments, I don't know if we'll have time to get to your comments, but maybe we'll jot them down after the show and maybe we can do something with that on a later episode. But let's start with the process. I fully 100% agree that, and I have talked about this with Easton separately. We talked about last week that Amy Adams-Strunk has had a lot of bad processes that have led to good results.
Yes.
That luck is at some point going to run out. That luck ran out yesterday for how they handled the press conferences. So that's a bad process, bad result. But more often than not, her bad processes, depending on how you view the process, led to bad results. So going back to Mike Mularkey, she let John Robinson, according to Corey Curtis, kind of dictate that, hey, I don't want Mike Mularkey. I want Mike Vrabel. He's become available. We need to hire Mike Vrabel. Let's push Mike Mularkey out with some bullshit reason. Okay? That is what has been said there. That's Is that a bad process? You may disagree, but I kind of feel like an owner letting someone else steer the ship. But she was new, so maybe that's not a bad process in your opinion.
Here-
But they
Here's
hired John Robinson in the middle of a season, and it maybe doesn't cause a losing streak, but that's something you could have done at the end of the year. And then you go into last year, or go into this past year. You allegedly told Mike Vrabel that his guy Ryan Cowden, which is a bad choice on Mike Vrabel's part, his guy Ryan Cowden was going to get the job, and then you go through the proper procedure for the Rooney Rules, which involves the league giving you a list of players that you have to interview. And you actually interviewed roughly, I think it was 5 minority candidates, 2 in-house candidates, and 1 random white guys, like how I put it. And that was Adam Peters. But he's not random. But
well, he didn't even get into the interview. He declined it.
he declined. I think was the only
Yeah.
one that declined the interview. So fuck that white guy. He goes in and she does all of this. Okay. And she ends up not involving Mike Vrabel, bad process, and hires Rent Carthon with the idea. And I like that PK has made this big, huge thing of she has been hypnotized, entranced with this idea of maybe building a Super Bowl contender, being modern, but she is now forcing someone, and I'm adding this to the process now. She's forcing someone not known to adapt, not known to evolve, not want to do things his way, and try to force him to do things differently. And it didn't work out. And then kaboom, here we are. So I think it's an entirely I put it like this, and I know this is long-winded and I haven't got you to answer. I put it like this. I blame Amy Adams Strunk for a lot of things that have not worked out in this whole situation. She has bad processes. But she is new. She's allowed to make mistakes. I mean, technically, I guess an NFL owner shouldn't be allowed to make mistakes, but they make mistakes. I mean, everybody does. But she has to start learning from them. If she doesn't learn from them this year, she can't fire herself. Maybe she could sell the team or the team could force her, but she's going to have to learn from her bad processes at some time. And the presser was just another bad process and bad result. And I think I have found the worst take of 2024 already from Jared Stillman. And he says that the PR department at the Tennessee Titans was great. It's great. No, because that is them. That's their job, is to not make yesterday happen.
Well, I mean, to be fair to the PR department, that like if Amy says that, well, I'm not going to go do a presser with Sin Rand, there's not a whole lot they can do to make her go. They could strongly advise her to. I hope they did. But
I would highly doubt it.
yeah, but yeah, maybe they didn't. Anyways, I would say this. I agree. Her processes from a hiring and firing of coaches and GMs has been awful from the jump. And I don't really give her the, well, she's new excuse right now, because she's been doing this for 9 years. Like she took over the controlling owner role in 2015. And then she obviously fired Rustin Webster. She fired
Well,
Ken
didn't she take it
Wisenhunt.
over in the 2016 year? So is it really 9
No,
years?
no, it's 9 years. She took over in 2015. Because she was
I
in
thought Tommy
charge
Smith
when
was
they
still
fired
there.
Wisenhunt in
Oh,
2015.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
gotcha.
So she's been doing it for 9 years. Anyways, but that whole thing, the firing of Rustin Webster and Ken Wisenhunt are the cleanest firings or hirings that this franchise has had since that time. Those both had to happen. We all knew that the team had gone 5-27 over their last 32 games. Maybe it was less than that, because I think Malarkey was actually on the hook for some of those losses towards the end of that year as the interim guy. But then we get into the 2016 offseason, and it comes out, and of course we know a lot more now later, but even at the time the process felt terrible in that she said, okay, whoever the GM is has to be okay with Mike Malarkey being the head coach, who had failed twice as a head coach before, was an older, kind of more old school guy. And look, Malarkey ended up being fine, and maybe ended up being the coach that they needed. So maybe she got it right, but I still think it was a terrible process for her to open up a coaching search with an opening at GM and head coach, and force all of the GM candidates to be shoehorned in with this one interim head coach.
And even
That's
that was a sham interview
it
process, as we have come
was.
to find out.
Which he has
So
gotten in
even
the trouble
then,
with the league for Rooney Rule
right?
stuff because of it, because Mark Malarkey basically came out and said, "Hey, I was told I had the job before she even interviewed Ray Horton."
Yeah,
So
bad process,
terrible,
but
terrible process,
technically, yeah, terrible process.
terrible
But I
and
mean, I'm just trying to put
illegal
in bad to good. But
process
bad to
for league
good. Let's
rules.
not add adjectives. Let's keep it simple for the people. Bad process, good result.
Okay result. Oh, I'll say okay result. They could have
They
found
went
a
to the
better coach than Mike
playoffs and changed the
Malarkey, in my
entire
opinion.
franchise around with
It,
Mike Mularkey.
okay result. They could have
Good
found a
result.
better coach than Mike
Again,
Malarkey.
your only two choices are bad and good in this, Mike. You can't start qualifying bad
Oh, come
process,
on.
good
We're not
result.
gonna do the hot take,
Yeah.
no
That's not
extreme
hot take.
only.
That's how
That's
that actually that scientific method or whatever you want to use is actually derived. It's bad process, good results, all that stuff. Bad
there are
process,
shades
bad
of gray.
result.
You can have an okay result.
You can have shades of gray, but we don't need to get into that kind of shades of gray just because you want to downplay, which you have never done before, what Mike Mularkey has done for this team. All of a sudden, because Mike Vrabel got
I think
fired,
Mike Malarkey did a lot of good things for this team. I'm not downplaying that. I'm
it was a
saying
good
that, like,
result.
could they have found a better coach? Yes, I think they probably could have with a better process. Anyways, moving on to the next the next situation. Obviously, she comes out and gives a public vote of confidence to Malarkey 1 week before turning around and firing him. Um, and look, she soft pedaled it, saying like he is going to be the coach here in the future, and we're excited about what we're building. Obviously, she only meant the future as in 6 days. From the time of that statement, but it doesn't make her look good when she does stuff like that. And I know Malarkey was pushing for a vote of confidence and publicly complaining about lack of support from the team. I get that. And there
Crazy
was
that the
rumors
PR team,
swirling,
this great PR team, didn't catch this
but
problem.
but again, like the fact that there were rumors swirling around the league that he was going to be out before they even got into the playoffs was bad. It was bad management. Like whether that's Amy's fault or John Robinson's fault, I don't know, but somebody was putting that out there. And it got back to Mike Malarkey and created the whole situation where she had to give him a vote of confidence before he goes and loses a playoff game, and then she fires him. It just makes him
But and
look
to be fair,
aimless,
how many
right?
times have we heard owners, GMs, head coaches say something and then like a week later it
You know,
gets turned around?
okay, I
It's
mean
standard process in all sports, right?
it happens sometimes, but it seems to happen
Yeah.
every time with the Titans, which is what I'm about to get to. Because then she comes in and she fires John Robinson mid-season, creates a distraction unnecessarily, as you mentioned. Bad process there, even though I think firing Robinson was justifiable.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe the I had thought that the best process so far was the hiring of Rand Carthon because she cast a wider net. She had a more traditional interview process. Obviously Vrabel was going to stay as the head coach, but it seemed like that process was good until we come to later find out that Vrabel wasn't really even involved in the interview process, despite the fact that she
I don't know,
was
probably good reason, it sounds like.
maybe. But I mean, if I guess my problem is that if you are going to try to do a arranged marriage thing where you're going to bring in a GM that Vrabel has no ties to, no relationship with, and make them work together and put it into this situation where like there's no defined like hierarchy between the two. That's
Yeah, now
asking for trouble.
that is
Like
a separate process from that, but, like, I just a lot of people think Mike Vrabel's earned a lot of things, and that maybe not necessarily this is not the hill that I probably wanna die on, but I disagree at the big arching premise that Vrabel has earned a bunch of things.
yeah, we can
But he has
discuss
earned
that.
at least the respect not to be lied to, because he's a big
Yes.
trust and relationship guy, and not to, again, be kind of like, I guess he needed to be involved from the get-go. And just
And if
like
he
I said
was
there on yesterday's show, Rand Carthon has to be involved in the get-go, and it seems that he is. Then that's what it needed to be. It didn't need to be, well, Ryan Cal. I think Mike Vrabel needed to be in the interview process to see that Ryan Cowden was not as good as Rand Carthon. Like as far as the interview process itself, like Ryan, I just don't think Ryan Cowden had a good grasp on anything. He was the right hand man of the guy you just fired. So,
I
and
I
that guy
didn't
was totally inept. by
I
the
didn't.
way.
Okay, I didn't want Cowden either, but to say he's totally inept, like we have no idea.
I
Like
said
I
John
mean,
Robinson is totally inept.
okay.
I said I doubt that, and I doubt that the guy that was totally inept's right hand man is going to be good for the job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I wanted Cowden or anything like that, but we don't know. Like, we don't know if Cowden would have been better or not. All we can
Yeah.
do is surmise from looking at like how their bosses performed in jobs and stuff like that, right? So, um, which if you've ever had a boss before, are you always exactly the same as your as your boss and have the same ideas and think you would perform the same in that job? I probably don't think so. But anyways,
Well, he hasn't impressed any of the other teams that have interviewed him either.
well,
So
that's true too. I mean, I think there's that's a valid point. But anyways, the point isn't that I think Cowden should have gotten the job. The point is that I think if she told Vrabel that Cowden was going to get the job and then went back on that,
yes,
that's a huge error on her part.
100% agree.
And I think the whole structure of like collaboration and nobody's really in charge. I
100% agree.
think was a huge mistake, and it just seemed misguided at the time. Like at the very least, you should have had, if you wanted them to collaborate and share control, you still have to define what that control is. Somebody at the end of the day has to make a decision, and it can't just be a pissing match every time there's
Mhm.
disagreement, because it's healthy to have disagreement in a coach GM relationship, because look, the coach is always going to want to win now. He's always going to want to have the best players right now, future be damned. And the GM is
It
probably going to
doesn't
take a
sound
longer
like
term
that was the
view.
report, though, coming out of this whole one person wanted to blow up and one person wanted to glow up.
Right. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like they disagreed on how
Yeah.
that should look. But I guess the structure was bad from the jump,
Mhm.
and that has now
Agreed.
led to the firing of Vrabel, who was, I know people are sick and tired of the losing, and I get all that. I've been consistent all year that I think Vrabel is a good coach with a terrible roster, and I think good coaches with terrible rosters still have bad results. Sean McVay has had bad results. Kyle Shanahan has had bad results. We talked about this on a show 2 or 3 weeks back. If you want to go listen to all the examples that we talked about, go do that. The point still stands today. Like I feel the exact same way about Vrabel that I did 3 weeks ago, that I did 8 weeks ago, that I did in the offseason, because I thought that this roster was bad from the jump. And nothing that happened this year was a massive surprise to me. Short of like Andre Dillard being the worst pass blocker I've ever seen in my life. I thought he'd be better than that.
They could
But
have had Dennis Kelly if not for Rand Carthon.
true. But I just, so I don't know. I think Vrabel was a good coach with a bad roster. And the fact that she talks to somebody, maybe not Amy, some high ranking official within the Titans, talks to Diane Orsini 7 weeks ago and says, there's one thing that they're clear on, that Vrabel is the man to lead the vision for the future, and ready, steady Vrabel, right? Like that whole report that was put out there. And for
Can I
that
ask
to
a
change
question? Do
seven
you think it
weeks
was
later,
really Amy Adams Strunk, or do you think it
no,
was Mike Vrabel?
no, I don't think it was Mike Vrabel who put out a report, ready, steady Vrabel. I think it was
I don't know. Coach better, play better, ready, steady, Vrabel.
high
I don't know. He
ranking
seems like a guy that likes
official.
his like repetition kind of things like that.
High ranking official I take to mean someone in the ownership group, which is
Do you
not
think it's
just
like
Amy Armstrong. Could
Kenneth
be Kenneth.
Adams?
Could be
And
Kenneth. Yeah,
maybe
I don't
it's
know.
Tommy?
It could be
Maybe it's Bert.
yeah, it could be Burke Nihill. I don't know. Like somebody within the
So you don't
higher
think
up.
it was Amy?
Not necessarily. It could have
Okay.
been. Like it could have been. I
Yeah, it
don't
could have
know if
been.
she has a relationship with Rossini or not. Um, but I don't know. I guess my point is, over that 7 weeks, the Titans went 3-4. The results on the field didn't really change. And all of a sudden it goes from the one clear thing that they're unanimous about is that they have their coach and they are ready to move forward into the future, to he's fired, out on his ass 2 days after the season. The fact that the whiplash from that to that, and also with the
Is
background
that
of John,
whiplash in the NFL? Because that sounds like
seven
either
seven
let's
weeks
say
with
that
no.
it was Amy at that said that to Diana. Okay, so hypothetically, allegedly or hypothetically, this is Amy talking to Diana, ready, steady, Vrabel. Vrabel's our guy. Okay, so let's say that's Amy. Is 7 weeks later in the NFL, a business that is a fast-paced moving business, two questions. Is that really whiplash and rash? Or is that maybe it was, we want Vrabel to be here, ... but we have stipulations in parentheses?
I just don't buy the stipulations thing, because if you're
Even though
saying
Ian reported it today.
the one clear thing that you're unified on is that the vision you have is Vrabel leading this team forward. To me, that comes without
But that doesn't
stipulations.
seem like it is the vision, though.
It's well, I
Because
don't. No one knows what the
even what
vision
Diana
is.
reported today on Robbie and Rex Road is that they wanted him to conform to their vision, Rand and Amy's vision. And this is from Diana. And then they did, and then we see what the vision is on words, on paper, from her statement. And because we're going to talk about that stupid ass Preston situation, no worry about that. But we see that they were giving him a chance to conform to their vision, and that to me could be part of a bad process, unless you really think that your vision is better than Mike Vrabel's vision.
I guess my problem with that is, like, did they not have any discussion about what the vision is for the franchise 7 weeks ago, before that quote from Rossini came out? Like, did they not know that they weren't on the same page all season? I think it's possible, given like
That's why
what
I
we've
think it's not
heard.
Amy or Rand saying that to Rossini. I think it's someone that's probably not even inside the building. That's probably like,
I
that's
mean,
kind of why I think it's like a Kenneth
she
Adams or something.
straight up said high-ranking Titans official
Yeah.
in the
That doesn't
article, which
necessarily mean you could be a high-ranking official in title, but not in football operations.
right. But I mean, even like, I mean, the quote being that they were all unanimous in agreement with this. I mean, maybe like one person's opinion was that they were unanimous. I don't know. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
parse that out anymore. But like, at the end of the day, going back to last year when she fired John Robinson in the middle of the season, that was a very clear, and we talked about this at the time, statement to everyone that she felt this was a roster problem, not a coaching problem. And for that to have changed, 14 months later, after an offseason in which really the roster got worse, I think people will hear that and think I'm a little bit crazy. But I mean, Ben Jones and some of these other guys that they lost along even Dennis Daly. Dennis Daly was better at left tackle than anything they trotted out there this year. So they got worse at several spots. Now they got better in a few spots too. I don't think it's a huge difference, but the roster's no different. It's not materially different than it was at the end of 2022. So I just don't, I don't know that I feel like Amy is going with, she's kind of siding with the person who has just failed the least recently, and I feel like she's done that several times now, and that it was Malarkey was her guy, and then she hired Robinson, but she really liked what Robinson did in the draft, so then Robinson was her guy, and then she let him hire Vrabel, but then Robinson had some bad drafts, so then Vrabel was her guy, and she goes and
Well,
chooses
it sounds
Vrabel,
like,
and
though, that Carthon
Carthon
was
is
her
her guy.
guy the moment he was hired. Carthon was her guy. Carthon moved to the top of the top 5 MySpace in her lovable thing, and like as soon as he was hired, like
But I think this swaying back
supposedly,
and
according to
forth
Diana,
between.
yeah, but according to Diana, when he was hired, they wanted to see if Vrabel could fit their vision. Carthon and Amy Adams Strunk vision for the team. Can he work with Rand Carthon? Can Rand Carthon work with Mike Vrabel? And I think, again, I can add that to the bad process list, because we all know the answer to that question. Like, I believe that we know the answer to that question. And so I think that was a bad process. I don't think, and I also think that if that was your idea of a vision, that you wanted to be something different than what you have been, maybe even before You hired Rand Carthon. You should have gone ahead and fired Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. I'm a big believer in bringing a GM and a head coach in at the same time. Is one of my
Yeah.
big things about this whole thing. And I'm not saying that Mike Vrabel even deserved to really be fired last year, and I'm not saying that he really deserved to be fired this year. But I'm saying that if he does not fit your vision, you should have let him go earlier than later. That is what I'm saying, because you created an environment with confusion, with power struggles, backstabbing, infighting, people undermining Rand Carthon to the media. You created this environment that nobody found fun to go work at. And you created it. That is on Amy Adams Strunk. What is also on Amy Adams Strunk is this entire presser debacle that
Oh
happened
my God.
yesterday. And it was utterly ridiculous. And I was really like, when I read the press release, I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, that was damning of Mike Vrabel. Like, that whole middle section, starting with the evolution and innovation and all this kind of stuff, I was like, wow, that's just as damning as what she released about John Robinson, right?
Yeah.
You clearly saw a vision right there. And then they go into this weird tap dancing of just not saying what she already said. Like, that's all you had to say.
Yeah.
When people ask you, what's the vision for this team? Well, as I said in my statement, me and Rand both agree that we want to evolve and innovate to reach a Super Bowl. That's all he had to say in the press conference when he was asked. But this idea that this secret game that Amy Adams Strunk is playing is crazy to me. I don't necessarily blame Rand for anything that really happened in his presser, because he was put in a position that he should have never been put into. And I really blame, he should be being asked about more about the personnel stuff. Like, it should have been a tandem. Here comes Amy, talks about the Vrabel stuff, and maybe a day later, Rand comes and talks about the state of the roster.
Or have them
Because
both at the
the
same press
timing,
conference.
yeah, the timing to me, well, here's why I say that, and here's why I don't put a lot of blame on Rand. So I hope everybody, we have a lot of people, of course, watching, listening. I hope everybody takes this into account. And heed these words. People are forgetting the human element of what Rand had to go through yesterday. He talked individually to personnel staff members, to coach staff members, and had to have really tough, straightforward conversations, and had to ask really tough and answer really probably a lot of uncomfortable questions. He had to face the music, and he did that all damn day yesterday after he found out that the owner was going to fire the coach. And then he goes into a presser and then he is hamstrung by ownership and is now having to think carefully and fumble over words and echo the same message that she wants him to echo. And I feel so bad for Rand Carthon right now. And I know many people in the media don't, but I do. And I hope that the fans kind of take that into account. You're basically having one guy do all these exit interviews with people who are loyal to Mike Vrabel, the guy you guys seemingly fired together, that you ran out of
And
here.
that apparently you had differences of opinion with, or
Yeah.
differences of vision with, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And then he had to go and do a press conference that he shouldn't be doing. That's why I think he should have waited a day later to do his personnel question. So that's just, I think they should have separated. And again, bad process by Amy Adams Strunk. And this time, it definitely equaled a bad result. Her luck ran out.
It was a terrible press conference. I look, I get that Rand was in a bad spot. I feel for him in that sense. I do. Like, I think everything you said is accurate as far as like the emotional toll of the day, plus being thrown into a press conference. He had no business being put forth, just like Mike Vrabel had no business being put forth last year when John Robinson was fired. His boss had been fired, right? Like, and you want him to go answer questions from the media about why.
And same thing about Rand Carthon. His boss got fired, and he had to go and answer questions.
Well, yeah, or maybe not boss. We don't really know. Nobody knows who's in charge of what or anything like that around there. It's too secretive to be able to trust the media or the fans to even know who is deciding things. because that might give away some sort of competitive edge, right? But I think it was terrible that he was put in that situation. It was a huge, like, I get that Amy Armstrong does not love facing the media, is not comfortable in that setting. I understand that. But at some point, that is her job. And if she's going to make
Arthur Blank just a couple of days ago did it.
if she is going to make the big decisions, then she has to face the big questions, right? Like that comes
And
with
if
the
that's the case,
territory.
like if you don't want to do it, don't handcuff the guy that you're sending out there in front of the firing squad.
Right. 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 Yeah. Let him speak freely. Or, I mean, who knows? I don't know if she told him not to say anything. I'm sure she told him, hey, we don't want to trash Vrabel, whatever. Like, and I don't expect him to trash Vrabel. That's the thing, too. Like, I think Carthon's performance in the press conference was not good. And I understand, like, he was in a bad spot to begin with. But, like, still, the fumbling over, like, well, we can't really share what the vision is right now. Now's not the time to do.
That's directly
What?
from Amy. It has to be.
That's fucking stupid. Like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but like, come up with something better to say than like, we can't share that with you right now, because it makes everyone think, fairly or unfairly, that you don't have a vision, that y'all are flying by the seat of your pants, that you're going to make up the
Will
vision
we
based
see the
on whoever
vision?
you hire as head coach,
And then they've already said what the vision is too. Like that's the other thing. But will there be like a statement or an article from Jim Wyatt or something where they maybe do another sit down with Mike Keith and then they share the vision before they even hire the head coach? Because they're getting a lot of blowback on the vision thing. Rightfully so. Rightfully
Yeah.
so. Even though that we know what the vision is. Like,
I mean, kind of.
My issue is, well, I mean, what
They
more
want to
do
win
you
a
need to
Super
know
Bowl.
that they want to, huh?
They
Well,
want to
that
win a
we
Super
know they
Bowl.
want
So
to
does everyone
evolve
else.
and innovate the offense. That's what we exactly know. That's what they said. They want to evolve and innovate. They want that whole paragraph is your vision statement. Like
I think that's the
come on.
closest thing we have to it, but they could give us a little bit better answers on that.
Yeah.
Or
I
I
mean,
mean, even,
sure, they could go in depth and detail and stuff like that.
and
But
no, I'm not even.
if all you wanted was something simple like, oh, we want to win a Super Bowl, you got that. Like,
No,
I
I
mean,
did,
you
but
didn't
that's
get that
not what
in
I
you
want.
didn't get that
Yeah.
in the pressers, but you got that in what I'm saying is you got that.
Some sort of
So what are
coherent
the
statement
chances?
that everyone is on the same page with would be nice. As far as
Yeah.
we know that this is the roadmap to a Super Bowl, and this is where we are going. That is
And
what
I think
I
we
want
know
my
what that
top
is.
brass to
And
be.
she said it in that paragraph. She's totally said that in that paragraph, but I agree that I don't understand the reasoning or whatever behind not just repeating that paragraph when you're asked a question.
Yeah, and I think the
Because that
other
answers the
problem.
question.
Right. The other problem I have with the Rand Carthon interview part of this is that he was, I mean, to me, like, either obviously lying about the Vrabel relationship and how good it was and how
Oh,
every
I got a
decision
good
was
analogy for this because I
unanimous,
lived this.
and how all this, everything was great. Everything was, we loved each other. He's my best friend, all this stuff. When there have been reports after reports after reports that that's not true, and if he was like doing such an awesome job collaborating, then why isn't he here today? Like, those answers to me just rang of total bullshit, and I don't expect him to trash Vrabel or say, no, we had a terrible relationship and blah blah blah. All I expect him to say is, yeah, we had disagreements about things, and we worked together. We had a good working relationship, but yeah, there were disagreements. That's all I want. I don't want, I don't need you to give me specifics. I don't need you to tell me that you wanted to trade Kevin Byard and he
And again,
didn't.
they already said that in the
Um,
Teron Davenport interview from on ESPN.com when
but again,
Teron released it a
why?
couple of weeks ago. They said it. You've already said it. Why can't you say it again?
Right.
Like that, that's
Say it
what I'm
again. Don't
saying.
lie to
I'm
me.
saying, why can't you say it again?
Right.
Like that screams to me that Amy was very involved in what Rand could and couldn't say. But I will say this. You can have, because Diana Russini reported that they had a good relationship from everything we've heard around the league. You can have a good relationship and not work well together. You can have a good
Well, you
relationship
can like a
outside the
guy
thing and not work well together.
yeah.
And I think that's ultimately, I think that's where we're at in this. I think that everybody's using the term relationship when they say maybe they should define working relationship or how'd you guys work together or this or that, and I know that people did in the presser yesterday. But my big thing is like it's already in print, some of this stuff that you're refusing to answer. Like, I do not understand that. That's why to me it's like Amy is like puppet mastering or doing something or thinking this is the way that it needs to be done, and it doesn't need to be done that way. So I see Gary Kester did put this up, and I said I wasn't going to get in the chat, but he goes, but I think they didn't want candidates to just repeat the vision in interviews. If your bullshit meter's that bad, like, I mean, come on. I mean, that's a bigger looming issue. And I think the question, I want to ask you this. So do you think it was when you say you thought it was a rash decision,
Yeah.
what do you mean by that? Do you mean like she made it in 24 hours, or do you mean like 7 weeks to me is not a long time?
Yeah, I just think for a big decision like that, one that changes the entire course of your franchise, 7 weeks is a pretty short time period when the results on the field have not changed, right? Like the results on the field were, if anything, maybe a little bit better than what they'd been for most of the last year. Um, going back to the start of the 7 game losing streak, they were 3-4. They beat the Dolphins, they beat the Jaguars, they beat the Panthers, of course, which I'm not going to give them any
Oh
flowers for
man.
that. But you went 3-4 down the
But
stretch
we also knew this
since
was the
that
easiest part of
statement.
their schedule too, right? Like, we all knew that heading into this, it was the
But
easiest part of their schedule.
they didn't. No, it wasn't. But it didn't turn out to be the
We
easiest
did
part of the
say that on this
schedule.
show, that this was gonna be the easiest part of their
Before the
schedule.
season, and then we saw how good the
And in
Texans
the
were,
season,
and
heading
we
into the
saw how
bye.
good other teams were down the stretch. And the Dolphins, were one of the better teams in the league. They went and beat them in Miami. They beat the Jaguars, who had a division title to win, in the final
Someone should have
game.
told them that.
Well, yeah, right. But I just think, yeah, their performance on the field was as good or better than it was the whole season. So I just don't. I feel like this comes down, and that's why my bullshit detector goes off when they say stuff like, "Oh, well, we were totally aligned. We were totally in lockstep." Well, then
Yeah.
why was Vrabel fired? Because if the results on the field were okay 7 weeks ago, and he was the future 7 weeks ago, and now he's not, something has changed, and it's not the results on the field. So to me, it is. That's what I consider it, making it a rash decision. I think it was either an alignment deal, which if so, they should just come out and say it. There's nothing damning about
Directly say it.
saying,
Not allude to it like they
right.
do in the statement, but directly say it.
Yes, say we, Vrabel and Amy and
You're asking a
Rand.
lot to have fans and media actually have nuance. We've talked about this on the show a lot. And you're asking this fan base to infer from a written statement and kind of piece together their own evidence to easily a question something you can easily answer. And I think that's
and and
asking a lot.
and this is something Gentry Estes, with the Tennessean, wrote an awesome article, in my opinion, that went into this, and it is a habit of this franchise, at this point. That all this stuff is like cloak and dagger and state secrets, and like they can't ever tell the media or the fans anything, because that would be, just crazy if you let them in on what is happening with this franchise that you're asking them to live and die for, and pay thousands of dollars for PSLs for, and pay thousands of dollars in season tickets, and buy merch and buy gear, and go show up every Sunday. It would be crazy to let them in a little bit on like what your vision is for their franchise moving forward, because at the end of the day, you know the fans finance everybody's salary in this, right? Like this is all built on the back of fans showing up, fans being supportive of the team. And I understand they are not obligated to do that contractually as far as give us any information, but understanding what this fan base has been through recently, it might buy them a little bit of goodwill to just say, look, we're going to be transparent with you guys. This is what we're doing. This is why we're making these moves, and making, moves that, like, it'd be one thing if Vrabel was just awful his entire time here and it was clear he needed to go. But like, he took a team, and this is ultimately why I still believe he's a good football coach, and I think he'll be a good football coach wherever he lands. He took a team that had Ryan Tannehill as a quarterback. Nobody here thinks Ryan Tannehill is an elite quarterback or a top five quarterback, or comparable to Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, or any of these other star quarterbacks around the league, Joe Burrow, whoever. Um, he took that team and was just as good as those teams with those star quarterbacks over a 3-year stretch, basically from 2019 to 2021. They were right there with the Chiefs, with the Bills, with the Ravens, with these other teams that are consistently at the top of the conference, at the top of the NFL record wise, and he was competing with them. Ryan Tannehill went 5-3 against the combination of Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen head to head, including playoff games. Did he do
Okay,
that
so
because
so
he's a
you
better quarterback or because they had better rosters, or did they do that because Vrabel was a damn good coach? I think if Vrabel was a damn good coach.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What do you think of this idea of being historically mediocre versus do you think that this team is do you think this team is content with being mediocre? Because I would argue that this current iteration of the Tennessee Titans are obviously not content with being
No,
mediocre, depending on your level of mediocre, but they are trying to get to a Super Bowl, and their moves dictated ever since Amy Armstrong. You fire playoff head coach to get Mike Vrabel. You fire a struggling general manager like Rustin Webster, and you successfully get John Robinson, who apparently was way in over his head in 2016, and we may be overinflating 2019 or everything else but 2019. I think 2019 is appropriately inflated, but
from
you fire
2016 to
him because he got
2019,
the
he did a
roster.
really
Yeah,
nice job.
yeah, from 2018 and a half to 2019, maybe.
I don't know. In
What I'm saying is,
2016, I'm still giving him some credit there.
oh yeah, because the Kevin Doug pick was so great that he desperately wanted and didn't even want Derrick Henry. But yeah, you're right. Hey, listen, this guy fucking just is inept. I mean, John Robinson was inept, and he clearly started struggling, right? And so she got rid of him, and then here we go. Mike Vrabel has struggled these last 2 years. We have to results based business. There's a lot of context surrounding it, but Mike Vrabel, he himself has struggled. Some of the choices of his own or of his own choosing that have caused a struggle, but he has struggled. And they make a move to move off from someone because they're not content with the state of where the franchise is currently at and think that Rand Carthon can be the guy. And every move, everybody has gotten better, but it's only been better for a short period of time. So, do you think that it's fair to view this decision as well? This franchise is historically mediocre, so this decision is mediocre.
No, I
Because
don't think. I don't.
Vrabel John Robinson showed that this is not historically, or Amy Armstrong is not content with being mediocre.
No, I think she absolutely wants to win, and I think it's unfair to criticize her, drive to succeed. I think she very clearly wants to succeed. Now, whether she's doing the right things to get there or not, I
Right.
think is clearly debatable. But I think she's invested a ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of resources into this team. Here's like we've said a lot of critical things about Amy in this podcast already, so I do want to make this clear. She has spent a shit ton of money at St. Thomas Sports Park, not just renovating and adding on to the team facilities, but bringing in modern state of the art culinary people, like nutrition folks, sports science people, like all kinds of stuff that is not on the coaching staff or in the scouting staff. A lot of the support staff that helps this team run day to day, she has invested a ton of money in expanding and modernizing, because if you listen to like Jake Locker and Matt Hasselbeck talk about like what the Titans
Even Nate
nutrition staff
Washington.
was
Nate Washington went to
compared
bat for
to
Amy Adams Strunk last night against
yeah.
fans.
Well, and compared to like other places that they'd been, they said it was a joke, right? Like the Titans literally were a joke from that standpoint before Amy got here. It's not a joke anymore. She's brought it up to NFL level. She's got a new stadium deal. She brought the draft here and made it a smashing success in 2019. She's done a lot of things right. I just think her processes with hiring and firing GMs and head coaches has not been great. Now, and I'll
The
admit this
results,
too, the results have been pretty good. Like, I mean, she fired Rustin Webster, hired John Robinson. John Robinson, for all his faults,
yeah,
unquestionably better than Rustin Webster. She fired, Wisenhunt, Malarkey unquestionably better. Goes from Malarkey to Vrabel unquestionably better. And then she goes from Robinson to Carthon. It's way too early for me to say Carthon is unquestionably better than John Robinson, but there's some things that I like that Carthon brings to the table, like the analytics angle of things, the fact that he's got he does seem to have an open mind to bringing in other ideas and collaborating and trying to kind of put a big mixing pot together rather than being the football king like John Robinson apparently ran his scouting department as. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of positives, but it does seem like they're moving incrementally in the right direction at least.
Right.
So
I
and
mean,
they could do that
I
again.
think a lot of it. I think a lot of people think that she's like her dad,
No,
and I
no, no,
kind
no,
of
no.
disagree.
Completely different.
Don't
I
you?
think
I mean,
she's
in her
completely
decision-making
different.
process, I think she's completely different because I think Vrabel and John Robinson would both be here if Bud was still around. Like, I think that
Yeah.
if everything else happened, let's say Bud raised from the grave at 2018, he was like, "Oh, I'm back. I faked my death. Fuck you guys. I faked my death." And he's back, and I'm here to take control. Just needed a break. To me, I feel like Vrabel and John Robinson would both still be here.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, he definitely hung on to coaches longer,
Right.
um, in general, and I think they were completely different as far as their level of investment. Like Amy has also empowered John Robinson. Part of the reason they've been in cap hell this past year was because she empowered John Robinson to go spend above the cap, basically, which not literally, but doing the restructures and kicking the can down the road and structuring contracts so that you can squeeze more salaries or more players into the current year at the expense of future years. And at the expense of her pocketbook, right? Because all that money that is guaranteed has to be escrowed and funded up front. She has empowered him to do that from 2019 basically until 2022 when he was fired. So she has not been cheap by any stretch of the imagination in any realm of this, and I hate that criticism because it's patently false. And like I said, I am extremely critical of Amy's avoidance of the media and her processes for hiring people. But there are some things that she has done really, really well, and those things should be correctly attributed in the positive side for her.
Okay. I got two questions because I know we're running up against it here. You wanted to blow up.
Yes.
You want this offense to evolve, this team to evolve. Say yes for the podcast.
Yes.
Not nod your head. So why is it a bad thing that the coach that did not want to do either of those things is gone?
I don't think it necessarily is. I think
Okay.
my feelings on this are complicated. That I think Vrabel is a good coach. I think he is a winner. I think he does a great job connecting with players, getting the most out of them, all of that. But I also do agree that, hey, if you could have Ben Johnson here or insert, your offensive play calling head coach du jour, into this thing and make it more progressive, make it a little bit more modern. I think that's great. That's exactly where I want this to go. And honestly, like while I do think you could have won big with Vrabel if you had gotten the right quarterback for him and the right roster around that quarterback, because I think he's a good coach again. And I think that setup of defensive head coach with an elite quarterback still works in the modern NFL. 5 of the 8 division winners this year were non-offensive play calling head coaches. I mean, I know Dan Campbell is technically an offensive head coach, but he does not call plays, and he is not like an offensive guru, right? Like, so I'm counting him as a CEO guy.
Oh, don't you downplay Dan Campbell like that.
He's a rah-rah guy. Like, he is Mike Vrabel just with, like, he played tight end instead of linebacker. Like, they're the exact same guy.
And coached tight ends and coached, on the offensive side of the
Yeah,
ball.
but he
Come
was never an offensive
on.
play
He's not
caller.
a play caller, I agree, but I mean, like, come on. He's an offensive
I
guy.
mean,
He's the
Vrabel,
offensive version of Mike Vrabel.
right? But I'm not counting him as like an like he's not a McVay, Shanahan, those guys, which are what we're talking about, like the offensive play calling head coaches. Because a lot of
Okay.
people feel
Yeah,
like that's
and
the
I agree.
only way
I
you
agree
can
with that.
win now.
Don't you
But
downplay Dan Campbell like that.
I like Dan Campbell. I just don't think he's that type of coach. He's a CEO, which is fine because I think you can win that way. But it makes it infinitely harder when you're trying to develop a young quarterback if you don't have, because the Texans are about to find this out, because I think Bobby Slowick is probably going to get a head coaching job after 1 year as the offensive coordinator, it makes it a lot harder to develop a young quarterback, which is where the Titans are now. If any success you have is then followed by, well, now we've got to replace the offensive coordinator again. And you try to promote from within a lot of times in that situation, but there's no guarantee the next guy is going to have the same, feel for play calling and everything like that the previous guy did. So it is certainly easier to go offensive. And that is why I think this hire has to be an offensive coach.
Has to be. Agreed.
Because if you wanted a CEO or defensive head coach, keep Mike Vrabel. Like, keep him.
Unless you want a guy that's like willing to at least entertain the idea of a different style of offense. Like, and I feel like that's kind of like what they're trying to get at.
But they did change the offense.
Yeah, but I mean, it still was, I felt like it was still like a really just not there yet kind of offense. Like,
it was not.
Bill Belichick struggling with the same kind of deal over there. He's struggling here. Art Smith struggling. Like, people surrounded with this, because like Bill O'Brien's up there, and that's where Tim Kelly learned, and they struggled. And I get that there's personnel issues and everything, but it's still not looking good. Like, that kind of like conglomerate is not looking good. But I want to get to this because we got just so much little time. So you're going to have to let me get to these. I'm going to have to shut you up a little bit.
All right.
Okay. Mike Vrabel goes to the New England Patriots. Can he sustain and get them to where they need to go with the lack of talent that they have? And are you entrusting him to make, in his, let's say, Ryan Cowden or whatever GM is going to be up there, to make the right decision at quarterback?
Yeah, I would. I mean, by all reports, they wanted CJ Stroud here, right?
Until he leaked it and ruined everything.
And yeah, I mean, who knows what?
Maybe he didn't want CJ
Carthon, whether that was Vrabel. Like, we can parse all that all you want. I know now everyone's going to say everything good was Carthon and everything bad was Vrabel because that's the way this works. But I think Vrabel, I would trust him with taking the number 2 overall quarterback and putting together a team that could win up there.
I can't wait for Caleb Williams to be forced to be a pocket quarterback and see how that goes. Okay. 18. I got a list of 18 head coaches. 18 head coaches, the playoff head coaches, and a few outliers that did not make it in. You're going to tell me yes or no. Is Mike Vrabel better than this coach? So is Mike Vrabel better than John Harbaugh?
No.
Is John Vrabel better than Sean McDermott?
No.
I agree. Is Mike Vrabel better than Andy Reid?
No.
Is Mike Vrabel better than DeMeco Ryans? Ooh, I'm surprised.
I'm gonna say yes.
I did too. Just because we don't, the story's still written.
Yeah,
but I think it's a good chance that DeMeco Ryans is better. Will be better. Kevin Stefanski.
I think Vrabel's better.
Okay. I disagree. And that's a recent turn of events. Mike McDaniel.
I'll go McDaniel.
Mike Tomlin.
No, he's not better than Tomlin.
Kyle Shanahan.
No, he's not better than Shanahan.
Yeah. Okay, Mike McCarthy.
Yes, he's better than Mike McCarthy.
Okay. I think I put Mike McCarthy as I think that Mike McCarthy's better, but I'm not like, it's kind of like on the line for me.
Yeah.
Dan Campbell.
I think if you gave just a quick detour, I think if you gave Mike Vrabel Mike McCarthy's roster,
your detours, you're the one with the heart out.
He'd absolutely be winning 12 or 13 games a year.
Okay, so right. Dan Campbell.
Give me Vrabel.
Okay,
I like Vrabel better.
I just like Dan Campbell, and I don't think it's really I think Dan Campbell at least obviously wants to have a different kind of style of offense, and that's kind of like where it comes with me. But we'll see. Yeah. Todd Bowles, obviously, he's better than Todd Bowles, right?
Yeah,
and I think he's better than Nick Sirianni.
Oh, I definitely
think he's better than Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, I think that's what I think. Nick Sirianni.
Sean McVay.
No.
Okay. Matt LaFleur.
No.
I agree. And that's recent too. Zach Taylor. Yeah, I did too. I agree that
Zach Taylor? I don't think he's better than Zach Taylor.
Whoa,
and that's recent
I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, I've come around on Zach Taylor.
Okay. All right. Sean Payton.
No, he's not better than Sean Payton.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think Sean Payton is not as good as what everybody says. Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, I'll give Vrabel the nod there.
Yeah, I did too. Pete Carroll.
No, he's not better than Carroll.
Oh, wow. See, I have Pete Carroll as a yes.
Now,
He is better than
current
Pete Carroll.
Carroll, I think you could make an argument, but Carroll's got a huge track record, and
Okay, so I have him as the 13th best head coach in the NFL, and you have him as the 12th best head coach in the NFL.
yeah,
Scientifically figured out of our definitive rankings of Mike Vrabel. So we'll revisit this later on at a later time. That will do it for us. I think it was a very good conversation that we had. A lot less screaming and yelling and dissension than I thought that we would have. Thought there was going to be a cage match. Bluegrass beverages, champagne, liquor, beer, all the stuff that you need, wine, Bluegrass beverages in Hendersonville, Tennessee. They are fantastic. Been around over 50 years, longer than Mike Vrabel has had a job in Tennessee. You will see that they give you the utmost modern, innovative, and evolved selections of liquor that you will see in Nashville. Bluegrass Beverages, Hendersonville, Tennessee. That will do it for us. Mike Herndon, you can read his article later, coming out later this Wednesday afternoon at paulkarski.com. Subscribe to that. We're going to have all kinds of stuff over at stackinginbox.com. Probably so much stuff. I will be stuck in this office for a long time. Okay. Stackinginbox.com. Make sure you subscribe to that. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.